Good evening, Kevin.
So we heard Pretty's fine words there. I agree with every one of them. British people have had enough of this. They've had enough of these migrants coming across in dinghies trying to illegally penetrate our borders. How does that square with the fact that this time last October, so throughout the month of October last year, 475 migrants came across in dinghies illegally. This October, 2,669. So far, 19,741 migrants have come across the channel this year. That's double the 8,420 that arrived in the whole of 2020. We're probably in line for about 25,000 by the end of the year. Despite Pretty's fine words, nothing ever seems to get better, does it?
Well, there's a song, things can only get better, but when it comes to immigration, things can only get worse. And quite frankly, this is just abject failure. She's right. I mean, the British people have had enough. We had enough before the referendum. We had enough before that in 2014 when people were voting for parties that said we will have uncontrolled migration controlled. The real fact is there's been no political will from this government or any other government in the last 20 or 30 years to manage it, and it's only now that it's so visible. And it's because it's so visible, Kevin, that we can see people filming them coming across on the channel, that they're actually embarrassed to try and do something. And that's what it's about. It's embarrassment. If no one was videoing this, if no one was seeing it, we'd hear the words and there would be even less action.
Now, there's a guy who is called, great title, he's called the UK's Clandestine Channel Threat Commander. His name's Dan Mahoney, and what he's referring to here, Stephen, is Priti Patel's upcoming Borders and Immigration Bill. This is what he says. These dangerous, illegal and unnecessary crossings are facilitated by violent criminal gangs profiting from misery, and more people will die as long as they continue. I agree with that. We are working with the French to stop boats leaving their beaches and crack down on the criminals driving these crosses. I don't think they're working with the French very effectively, but this is the bit I want to talk about. He says, our broken asylum system acts as a magnet for illegal migrants. Agreed. He then goes on to say the government's new plan for immigration will fix the system, making it firm on those who abuse it and fair on those in genuine need. If you believe that, Stephen, you'll believe anything. This borders and immigration bill might improve the situation a bit, but if it's going to stop 25,000 people a year, I'd be very doubtful.
It won't. I mean, generally it won't. I think what the Borders and Immigration Bill is seeking to do is, first of all, create a framework which says that we can try and perhaps have an asylum system where we might be able to use islands or different venues or different countries in which to host various asylum seekers. If that happens, well, that's great. That's like having the Australian system or what they're trying to do in Denmark. But the reality is nowhere in the bill, as it is at the moment, does it attack the real fundamental reason of why we have so many asylum seekers being able to come over. Firstly, it is international law. We're not going to change our duties under the UN Convention on asylum. Unless we leave that, that means that anybody, the moment that they cross this border and say, please, hands up, I want to claim asylum, we have to put them in the process system. And so, therefore, there's nothing in the bill that actually stops that.
And of course, the other thing is due to maritime law, if we see these migrants out in the channel, we have to go and get them and bring them into our beaches. Now, for some months now, Priti included, the authorities have been saying, we're going to change this, we're going to start towing them back. Now, I think it was about 2 months ago, we were told at a weekend that by Monday, the towing back to France would start. It hasn't, and I don't expect it ever will. Now, it's all very well, Stephen, to sort of point the finger at these evil people smugglers, and well, you might. But I do think that we've got to just stop saying it's only the smugglers who are the lawbreakers here. I think that the majority, 84% of our dinghy migrants are actually young males, younger than the age of 34. So these are not people fleeing distress and torture and war. They're economic migrants. Don't you think we have to start treating the migrants as if they're criminals too, and not just shoving them in hotels, giving them a bit of money and allowing them to walk out?
Well, I'd love to say that we should be treating them as economic migrants and therefore criminals. But a few months ago, Kevin, I'm not sure whether you picked up on this, but actually the Crown Prosecution Service
I did pick up on
issued a memo. Yeah, they issued a memo saying we're no longer going to treat these people as criminals. We're going to treat them solely as individuals who are victims. That's the word again, that usual victim culture that we have in our nation.
Of course.
Victims of the criminal gangs. Now, to an extent, there will be some victims, but not these people. As you quite rightly said, 84% of them are male up to the ages of 55. And the vast majority of them are from Iran and Iraq. And the other fact that people don't pick up on is once they claim asylum here, Kevin, it is generally the Iranians and the Iraqis that are granted bail on asylum to be able to go off freely across the country.
Yeah,
we grant them bail.
Yeah, when we put them in hotels, they can just walk straight out. And what the Crown Prosecution Service said was that it could see that no British laws were being broken. These people are arriving on our beaches, mostly having deliberately discarded their passports, but they arrive on our beaches on dinghies with every intention of trying to break into the country. I would have thought there's several laws are being broken there, and yet the CPS says we can't see any laws are being broken. It's extraordinary.
But the CPS is part of a whole group of individuals within our body politic and civil service that do not see mass migration as a major issue. Just as you've talked about early on about COP26 and this kind of cult around the green energy and green environment and the Green Deal, there is a cult that exists in our politic about supporting mass open door migration.
I think you're right.
When you think about the fact that there's only Migration Watch and the Centre for Migration, our institution, that is actually trying to bring out the issues of mass migration, the rest are trying to bring as many people in as possible.
Indeed. Thank you so much for your time, Stephen. Just a reminder to everybody that what we're talking about is that this time last year, there were 6 times fewer people coming across the channel than there are now. 6 times more migrants came across in October this year than they did last year